So you leave a comment on a teammate's project. Maybe it's a code pull request or like a draft of a quarterly report, and you type, might be worth breaking this section up, otherwise good to go.
Right.
And you hit send, your teammate reads it, they ship the project exactly as it is, and you both just move on.
Until 2 weeks later.
Exactly. 2 weeks later, under the crushing pressure of an end-of-quarter deadline, that exact section you highlighted breaks the entire release.
Oh, of course it does.
It causes this massive cascade of errors, keeps the whole department online until midnight, and the next morning you pull your teammate aside and tell him, you flagged this exact issue weeks ago.
And he pulls up the comment history, doesn't he?
Yep, he points directly at the words, might be worth.
Yeah.
And says he didn't change it because you never actually asked him to. He feels completely ambushed.
And you feel completely ignored.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the reality is, neither of you is wrong about what was actually said. Okay, let's unpack this, because what happened here is entirely about the mechanics of the fake suggestion.
What's fascinating here is the operational reality of why we use that soft phrasing in the first place. I mean, when you look at the root cause, this is not about politeness.
Right. It feels polite, but it's not.
No, not at all. And it's certainly not about collaboration. It's entirely a self-preservation tactic. The person leaving that comment knows exactly what they want before they ever open their mouth or touch their keyboard.
They want this section rewritten.
Exactly.
Right.
But by framing it as a suggestion, using phrases like, might be worth, or we could consider, or just a thought, they are protecting themselves from a potential confrontation.
So they're avoiding the friction of having to justify their technical opinion to a peer.
Precisely. It functions as a get-out-of-jail-free card. If things go wrong, as they catastrophically did in your scenario, the commenter gets to claim they suggested the fix.
Wow. So they successfully shift the blame while never actually taking the professional risk of making a definitive demand.
Yeah, it's completely risk-free for them.
It's the corporate equivalent of asking your partner, are you sure you want to wear those shoes? Like, you aren't asking a genuine question. You're issuing a condemnation wrapped in a question mark.
That is a perfect way to put it.
To put it in another context, it's exactly like being a backseat driver who mumbles, I think there might be a turn coming up, instead of simply saying, turn left at the next light.
Right, because if you miss the turn, the passenger gets to sit back, cross their arms, and say, I told you it was coming up.
Exactly. And they do this without ever having taken the actual responsibility for navigating the vehicle. The passenger gets all the benefit of being proven right with absolutely zero accountability for the negative outcome.
And we do this constantly in professional environments. We disguise our directives as options, so we don't have to own the consequences if our directive turns out to be flawed.
So how do we fix it?
Well, the operational fix requires a complete architectural shift in how we view direct communication. A flat no or a crystal clear directive is not a hostile act.
But people feel like it is, right?
Right.
It feels aggressive.
It feels aggressive to people who are used to hiding. But it's actually a highly functional, load-bearing tool for any team. It's a concrete decision.
Okay, so if you look at a project and say, change this function before shipping,
Yeah.
someone can actually work with that.
Right. They can push back on your reasoning, they can agree with it and execute, or they can plan around it out loud in a productive manner.
Whereas a vague suggestion leaves the call entirely to their judgment.
Yes, while secretly holding them to your hidden expectation. When they use their judgment and guess wrong, they get blamed for their interpretation of your vague words.
So you get to feel wronged without ever actually staking a claim on a decision.
It's a completely dysfunctional loop that introduces massive risk into the system.
So the structural shift you need to make right now is to just pause before you speak or type. You have to decide your actual intent. Do you want something acted upon, or are you genuinely open to either outcome?
You really can't have it both ways.
Yeah, you just can't.
Exactly. If you want it done, you must use directives. Say, do this, change this section, or do not ship this build. You must take ownership of the command and the risk that comes with it.
And if you're genuinely open,
Then you have to ask a real question that prompts an analytical response. Say, what are the structural trade-offs of breaking this function up versus leaving it as a monolith?
oh, that's so much better.
Yeah, because when we dress up our uncertainty or our fear of conflict as someone else's choice, We essentially poison the communication well.
Using soft language to avoid immediate friction isn't just something we do in quick code comments or passing emails.
Yeah.
This same mechanic scales up into how we handle massive high-stakes conversations.
It really does. It scales all the way to the top.
Right, and the instinct to soften the blow leads directly into the trap of over-explaining bad news. Imagine you have to tell a major client or an internal stakeholder that a critical project delivery is delayed because the technical implementation is just way more complex than the original estimate.
You know they're going to be furious.
Exactly. So you walk into the meeting, you open this massive slide deck, and you talk endlessly. You walk them through every single layer of back-end complexity, every server-side trade-off, every microscopic reason the initial estimate was wrong.
And you leave absolutely no room for them to breathe, let alone speak.
Right. But wait, doesn't explaining all the technical details show that you've done your homework? Like, as a professional, my instinct is to fill that void, to prove I have a plan, and that I respect your intelligence.
This raises an important question about the true purpose of all that talking. When we look at the mechanics of this interaction, over-talking in this scenario is not about informing the other person.
It's not.
No, it's a defense mechanism. Each new technical detail you add to that presentation effectively closes another gap where the client could jump in, ask a hard question, or express their frustration.
Wow, so I'm pre-filling the conversation to avoid the reaction.
Exactly. The delay makes you anxious about how it reflects on your competence. Explaining every angle up front feels like you're getting ahead of the pushback. It feels like preparation.
But it's actually avoidance.
It is pure avoidance. You are barricading yourself behind a wall of words so you don't have to sit there and face their immediate disappointment. You're managing your own anxiety, not the client's project.
And the client, sitting on the other end of this avalanche of information, they can't even follow half of it. They're just totally overwhelmed by the sheer volume of data being thrown at them.
Because all that actually lands for them is the one bottom line fact: the delivery is delayed.
Which leads to a pretty disastrous operational outcome, right?
Oh, absolutely. The client gets overwhelmed by the cognitive load of all these unsolicited details and simply says, okay, just go fix it.
Because they just want the meeting to end.
Yes. It is the fastest way to move the conversation forward and escape the barrage of information. And the speaker then packs up their laptop and walks away feeling fantastic. They think, I explained the situation, they agreed to the new timeline, crisis averted.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. That agreement was not a real agreement. That was just a shallow yes.
It's shallow yes, exactly.
It's the corporate equivalent of hitting the snooze button on a time bomb. It stops the beeping for 10 minutes, but it guarantees the explosion happens when you are completely unprepared.
Because the client did not process the trade-off. They didn't understand that they were agreeing to a 3-month delay in the timeline, not just some minor change in the technical approach.
Right. They just wanted relief so the speaker would stop talking at them.
And the real conversation, the annoyed, angry conversation that the speaker was trying so hard to avoid by talking for 20 minutes straight, is simply delayed.
It's going to come back.
It surfaces weeks or months later on the original delivery date when the product is not ready and the delivered reality dramatically clashes with the client's genuine misunderstanding.
So that second highly agitated conversation is just the first conversation arriving late.
But this time, the dynamics have completely shifted. You have absolutely zero control over how it goes. The trust is already broken, the timeline is already blown, and you can no longer claim you're being proactive.
So the granular tactic for delivering bad news without falling into this trap is painfully simple, yet incredibly difficult in practice. You look them in the eye, you tell them the timeline moved, you give exactly one reason why, and then you shut up.
You have to shut up.
But wait, just sitting in silence after dropping a bomb on a client sounds excruciating. How do you survive that 10 seconds of silence without caving and starting to ramble again?
You survive it by recognizing that the silence is a functional requirement for their comprehension. That silence is critical because it forces them to process the reality of the situation rather than just reacting to the volume of your words.
So they literally need the time to absorb it.
They need those 10 seconds to absorb the shock. After you give them that space and they finally respond, your next move is to ask what matters most to them.
Right. Ask which trade-off they'd rather take based on the new reality.
Exactly. Are they willing to cut a specific feature to hit the original deadline, or do they want to extend the deadline to keep the feature intact? You must let their answer shape the rest of the conversation.
You're building a new plan together, out loud, instead of pre-filling the space with every single defensive detail you can think of.
Yes. You're actually collaborating.
This reveals a really deep causal link in professional dysfunction. Whether it's hiding behind a fake suggestion in a code review or burying a project delay in an avalanche of technical explanations, the root cause is identical. We are prioritizing our own personal comfort over professional clarity.
We are.
We're actively choosing to avoid a moment of awkwardness at the cost of long-term success. And when this exact avoidance behavior moves from individual communication into the realm of team management, it doesn't just cause missed deadlines. It completely destroys team culture from the inside out.
Oh, it rots it completely.
Consider the classic scenario of the underperforming team member. Every single person on the team knows who it is. Everyone has been quietly picking up their slack. The high performers are working until 8 o'clock at night to cover this person's missed deadlines and sloppy work.
We've all been there.
Right. But in one-on-ones, the leader keeps giving this underperformer soft, encouraging feedback. The leader avoids laying out the hard truth because they don't want to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for the rest of the organization?
It means the leader is operating under a dangerous delusion. The leader thinks they're being nice, but they are actually eroding the entire foundation of trust within their team. We have to clearly differentiate the mechanics of kindness versus niceness here because they are not the same thing.
Okay, break that down for me.
Kindness is a standard for how you treat people. It's being respectful, providing necessary resources, and offering clear, actionable guidance so someone can actually improve.
Which means sometimes having tough conversations.
Yes. Niceness, in this specific leadership context, is an inherently selfish act. It is avoiding a hard truth specifically to manage your own image. You are being nice to ensure you stay liked by the person sitting across from you, completely ignoring the damage that person is doing to everyone else.
The leader is optimizing for their own emotional comfort in a 30-minute meeting, while the rest of the team is paying the physical and mental price for 40 hours a week.
Exactly.
I've seen leaders do this constantly, convincing themselves that being encouraging is the noble, empathetic thing to do. But they're completely blind to the mechanical fallout happening outside that office.
Precisely. And we have to look at how the team processes this behavior mechanically. The high performers on the team do not simply see an underperformer who is struggling.
No, they see right through it.
They're smart. They see a leader who knows exactly what the problem is and actively refuses to act on it. Every single time a leader says yes to avoid friction, or stays quiet to remain likable, or picks the decision the room will applaud over the decision the situation actually demands, they are trading the right decision for the comfortable one.
And the team remembers that.
The team remembers every single one of those moments. They log them, and it fundamentally alters the operational dynamics of the team.
This is where we need to examine the how. Like, how does a team react when they realize their leader is avoiding discomfort? They don't usually stage a mutiny, right?
No, it's much quieter than that.
Instead, they start rechecking every single call the leader makes, and they start managing around the leader's cowardice. If you tell the team a project will take 3 weeks, they silently pad it to 5 in their own schedules.
Because they know you won't hold the underperformer accountable to the original deadline.
Exactly. And they know they'll be the ones left holding the bag. Your metrics become pure fiction. Your resource planning becomes a joke. They smile and nod in the meeting, but behind the scenes, they're building shadow systems to protect themselves from your inability to manage.
That's spot on.
If you won't step up and have a hard conversation with the person who's dragging everyone else down, how can they trust you to make the right call on a multi-million-dollar project strategy? How can they trust you to advocate for them when upper management demands budget cuts?
They can't, and they won't. Trust within a team is never built by making popular, easy decisions. Trust is built by being correct and honest under pressure.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Especially then. When the easy, soft approach is sitting right there, the trusted leader asks whether it's the right call or just the comfortable one. By focusing intensely on maintaining their own image as a nice person, the leader entirely neglects the actual job in front of them, which is managing the performance, the output, and the well-being of the entire team as a collective unit.
Avoiding these hard choices doesn't just destroy trust from the top down either. When leaders prioritize their own safety from professional risk, it creates a toxic environment that completely suffocates innovation from the bottom up.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's look at one final scenario that perfectly illustrates this mechanism. An employee joins a mid-sized company and has a genuinely terrible onboarding experience. It is disorganized, frustrating, wildly inefficient. Their laptop doesn't work, they have no access to key systems, nobody knows who's supposed to be training them.
Typical corporate nightmare.
Total nightmare. And they spend a year at the company watching every single new hire struggle through the exact same broken process. Nobody formally asks this employee to fix it, but because they genuinely care about the company culture, they spend their own time, like nights and weekends, writing a comprehensive, improved onboarding plan.
Wow, they really care.
They map out the bottlenecks, they create a streamlined checklist, everything. They bring this proactive solution to their manager, fully expecting support and enthusiasm. Instead, the manager looks at the document, sighs, and says, "It is not your job."
Ouch.
Yeah. And then the manager asks the ultimate deflating question, will you take responsibility if this new plan makes onboarding worse? The manager insists that the human resources team would be the ones bearing the burden if this unauthorized new plan fails, effectively shutting the conversation down.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this manager is utilizing the absolute ultimate avoidance tactic. By immediately projecting the entirely hypothetical risk of failure onto the employee, the manager completely avoids having to champion a new process.
Because it would be hard for the manager to do.
Exactly. Think about what supporting this employee would actually require. The manager would have to coordinate with HR, advocate for a change in procedure across departments, and potentially face pushback from legacy employees who like the old system.
That requires intense effort and carries real professional risk.
So instead of doing the hard work of leadership, the manager weaponizes responsibility to kill the initiative in its tracks.
It is a brilliant, albeit deeply toxic defensive maneuver. The manager doesn't have to look the employee in the eye and say, "I am too lazy to help you push this through."
Right.
Instead, they reframe the employee's proactive, helpful behavior as a reckless danger to the HR department. They make the employee feel like they're overstepping boundaries and creating liability.
And the operational cost of this interaction is incredibly severe for the organization, far beyond just keeping a bad onboarding process.
Because they crush their spirit.
That is the critical point. The company doesn't simply lose out on a potentially better onboarding experience. That's the least of the damage. The real cost is that the organization actively trains its most proactive, highly engaged employees to stop caring.
Yeah, the employee learns a very clear, unforgettable lesson. Caring about a problem outside your immediate, narrowly defined scope is heavily penalized.
Exactly. The person who is voluntarily willing to improve the situation, the person who had firsthand painful experience of why the current system was failing, is shut down and made to feel foolish. There is only so much resistance a proactive employee will face before they completely give up and surrender to the status quo.
You take someone who is acting like an owner of the company, someone looking at the whole system and trying to fix it, and you force them to act like a renter.
A renter. I love that.
Yeah, a renter doesn't fix the plumbing. They just complain to the landlord or they move out. By weaponizing the risk of failure, you guarantee that this employee will never bring you a proactive solution ever again. They will do exactly what is in their job description and absolutely nothing more.
The granular fix for leaders in this situation is to completely reconstruct their initial response protocol. When an employee brings a proactive solution to a problem outside their immediate scope, you must never start by demanding they shoulder all the hypothetical risk.
It's just terrible fear-based leadership.
It is. The shift happens when you start by asking what specific problem they were trying to solve. You seek to deeply understand their perspective and the friction they identified in the system.
So you validate their effort first.
Validate it, and then your job as a leader is to act as a facilitator, not a gatekeeper. You connect them with the right departments, like HR, to safely test the idea in a controlled environment. You evaluate the risk together as a team, rather than using the threat of risk as a blunt instrument to shut down their initiative.
It all comes back to having the courage to face the operational reality of the situation instead of hiding behind soft words, forced silence, or bureaucratic red tape. We build these elaborate structures just to avoid feeling uncomfortable for a few minutes.
Nearly all the communication breakdowns, stalled projects, and leadership failures we've analyzed today stem from a single, deeply rooted, hidden desire: the desire to avoid immediate discomfort.
Every single one of them.
Whether it's softening a code review to avoid a peer argument, over-explaining a project delay to avoid a client's anger, ignoring an underperformer to remain liked by the team, or crushing an employee's initiative to avoid bureaucratic friction with other departments,
Right.
In every single case, the choice to avoid immediate discomfort guarantees a much larger, entirely uncontrollable failure down the line.
Look at your calendar for the rest of the day. Identify just one conversation where you are already planning to soften your words, over-explain a mistake to avoid pushback, or delay a hard truth just to keep things comfortable in the room. What would happen if, in that exact moment, you chose absolute clarity instead?